Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you are joining us. Thank you so much for doing so. I actually want to say aloha, but as you can all see, we are dressed themed for our beloved editor-in-chief George Upper. It's his birthday today, so we're just gonna throw that out. Wait, hold on.
Happy birthday,
George. That is incredible. Wow, that's quite the graphic.
It is quite the graphic.
I love that it's staying up. Can we just keep that up the whole show?
It really
Is
captures.
it the hat or the sunglasses that make it?
It's the combo,
Well, now that we've gotten that out of the way, welcome to another episode of WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. My name is Brian Chai. I am the manager of publishing operations here at the Western Journal. To my left, I have ace reporter Michael D. Austin. I will let you guys figure out what that stands for. To my right, I have, I already forgot. What's your title?
Supervising editor.
What's your name?
Supervising editor. I remembered your middle name. Supervising editor Andrew J. Shawshaw is with me today as well. We have a whole variety of topics to talk about. Well, I'm not sure about much these days.
George's birthday.
It is George's birthday. But between George's birthday, the craziness of the January, or kind of newfound evidence of what happened January 6th, Benjamin Netanyahu dropping bombs, and our favorite president, not Joseph Robinette Biden, making a fool of himself. Sure, it's funny, but that could also mean some serious bad things. So let's go and kick it over to Andrew.
Well, I'm actually glad that you said Bibi Netanyahu dropping bombs. The former
Dropping
prime minister, he does not have the power to drop bombs anymore in Israel. After about probably 10 years of just hearing every 6 months on the most cyclical cycle. I know that is redundant, but on the most cyclical possible trajectory of hearing every 6 months, there's an election in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu at risk of losing the prime ministership, and we hear it everywhere, all over the news. A lot of the time, it's wishful thinking from the left-wing establishment media, but we hear about it constantly. Finally, it would appear that Benjamin Netanyahu's party did not win enough votes to put him in the prime ministership immediately. Again, Israel works much like Britain on a parliamentary system, and so there's more than two parties, and those parties have to sometimes, if they don't win the proper plurality of votes, they have to start forming coalitions to get to that majority. And that a lot of the time means striking some deals to let certain folks in the smaller parties have more of a voice in leadership. And in this case, it meant Bibi Netanyahu is not going to be the prime minister anymore. Instead, right-wing politician Naftali Bennett is going to be the prime minister for 2 years of the 4-year term. And then for the second 2 years of the 4-year term, Yair Lapid, a liberal, is going to be the prime minister. So they've actually formed a coalition between the far right and the left-wing caucus to get power back, and they're going to split the prime ministership over the course of this 4 years between a liberal and a more far right figure, which is deeply interesting. But more interesting even than that is the fact that on his way out, Bibi Netanyahu lobbed a couple bombs at Joe Biden. And this is not a figure that I tend to believe is particularly courageous in his leadership. He's very shrewd. He knows what he's doing, but he's never looked to me as though he was the bomb dropping type, save for actually dropping bombs on Palestine. But we have here a quote, and this is in a Western Journal story. If you want to go to the Western Journal at any point today, this is, I believe, is still on the homepage. We have coverage of his exit speech where he said, "We have turned Israel into a global power." In this last couple of years, that's a quote. And then back to the quote, "We've done this not by surrendering to international pressure, not out of weakness. We did this out of power." Of course, he's talking about, the relationship between Israel and the United States under, President Trump. President Trump came in and, despite the kind of conservative support for Israel, obviously Republicans kind of haven't done particularly all that much for Israel other than, the military and financial support. They've never made major moves like moving the embassy to Jerusalem. That was under Donald Trump. So, this kind of stronger foreign policy from the United States allowed Israel to kind of flourish. And he went on to say, that Israel fought with determination against Iran's attempt to acquire nuclear weapons under the Obama administration, obviously, even if we had to stand alone, completely alone against the whole world and many in Israel. This determination affected the previous American administration to leave the dangerous nuclear deal. It's not a secret that the United States plans very soon to return to that dangerous agreement, which my colleagues and I completely oppose. I want to tell you the American administration asked me not to publicly air our disagreements on these matters. We have disagreements. They asked us to keep them discreet. So Bibi Netanyahu coming out firing on all cylinders on his way out of the prime ministership, saying that Joe Biden's administration is ready to get back in that Iran nuclear deal. Very controversial. An opportunity for Iran, the nation of Iran, to go back and decide, we're going to continue our nuclear power program. Now, again, this should, the kind of the networking of that deal should stop them from getting weapons-grade nuclear uranium. Of course, that's not generally the case. We've already seen that given Trump's decision to exit that agreement, they've already skyrocketed up to levels that, they could leapfrog on to weapons-grade nuclear uranium. So Israel, not pleased with this decision, at least the former prime minister, and on the way out, he's firing shots across the bow at Joe Biden. What I kind of want to ask you guys, because we know that obviously there was a good relationship between Netanyahu and President Trump in the last administration, but there were a couple of times where in that last year of the election, Trump was trying to kind of use that as a political tool, trying to say, look what we've done with regard to Israel, look how strong we are on the world stage. And Netanyahu, given opportunities in actual press conferences on the Middle East peace, was given opportunities to throw some shade at Joe Biden. And he didn't do it because he thought that in the next year, if Trump lost and he won, that he'd be working with Joe Biden and he had to keep that relationship pure. What I want to ask you guys was this guy strictly just a snake, a political creature, or was he really going to stand up to Biden whether he was returned to the prime ministership or not?
Well, I mean, he's a political operative. I wouldn't say he's a snake. He's definitely a politician's politician. And, I would say he's looking out for his own job, but he's also looking out for his country. And, the reason that he has a problem with Joe Biden right now is because Joe Biden is definitely, screwing over Israel. There's no two cents about it. He's sending so much funding to the Palestinian Authority, which is anti-Iran, and all that money is undeniably, not all of it, but a lot of it is being redirected to Palestinian terrorists. So, yeah, Netanyahu, I'm glad that at least he's saying some of this stuff now that he's going out. It would have been a lot nicer if he had said a lot of it before, but this is better than nothing, I suppose.
That is a wonderful point, Michael. You get a lay.
Thank you. Yes.
All right.
I didn't know this was going to happen today.
So to answer your question, snake's probably a bit strong. I do think he's calculating, but I think you kind of have to be, especially in a political arena that is sometimes literally as cutthroat as any in the Middle East. I think you kind of have to be. But, it's hard for me to blame Netanyahu for any sort of kind of, two-facedism that we might get from this. Because, if you genuinely dislike someone, you can't blame someone for that. No. But if you're being cordial for the sake of, working relationships, then, it is what it is. It's hard for me to say that Netanyahu did anything wrong per se.
Well, and if your country is constantly under attack on all sides, you do need to be a little more political. You need to make sure you get as many allies as possible to make sure you can mitigate that disaster as much as you can. So, I can understand why he used to like to play both sides.
I think you guys are absolutely right. There's no doubt when you need to reach out to other countries for support in such a kind of precarious situation, you need to be able to play both sides of those other countries' political landscape because those things factor in. If someone else comes to power and, you're out in the weeds by yourself, that's a huge problem. What I really want to ask about this, however, and it kind of bridges the gap to what Brian brought to the table today is it concerning that some of America's strongest allies in some pretty important geopolitical regions are actually scared of what Joe Biden is bringing to the table in terms of foreign policy? Is that a problem?
Yes, for a multitude of reasons. I think the biggest of which, especially when you compare, I don't think this is necessarily a one-to-one comparison, but when you look at the way Trump had his relationships with, foreign countries, people didn't like what he had to say. They didn't like, kind of the tone, the rhetoric, whatever. but the actual messaging was pretty upfront and legit. And I don't think losing that, everyone says like, oh, I do think the whole, but he has mean tweets. Like that whole trope is overplayed.
Ridiculous.
But I do think there is something to this idea that, Trump just ruled with a stronger, tightly clenched fist than Biden ever can, I think, if I'm going to be honest.
Teddy Roosevelt diplomacy. Speak softly. I guess speak very loudly and carry a big stick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should be too worried about the opinions of other countries, even if they're our allies. But yeah, the reasons they're concerned is because Biden is so flip-floppy. He's so weak on foreign policy. He's in bed with a lot of countries that we shouldn't be in bed with, like Iran. So yeah, specifically the reasons why they're concerned. Yeah, that's a big deal, and that's something we should be worried about.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Thank you. I too.
Wow,
Andrew
man.
has yet to get one.
Yeah,
I'm getting dominated out here.
If Andrew made a good point, I could give him one, but alas.
Well, maybe it'll happen.
Cake.
And that was the end of my point. If you want to keep going from there.
If that was the end of your point, I guess that means we should probably talk about what Brian brought to the table.
Well,
I think that's a pretty good point.
So, unfortunately, the Biden bashing will continue because it must continue because he is the president of this country, whether we love it or hate it. Biden's the guy right now. And I can think of few people out there on this planet who I would rather have less to be the guy than Joe Biden. Case in point, the G7 summit, which happened over the weekend. Joe Biden had several gaffes, but one in particular stood out because it was a particularly grandfatherly moment. And I mean that with no disrespect to any of the grandfathers out there, including George Upper, who is a grandfather, and it is his birthday today.
Yeah.
So happy birthday, George. But yeah, let's go ahead and roll that video of Joe Biden.
And just say how pleased I am to welcome those who have just joined us, bringing some pretty spectacular weather with them. Prime Minister Modi, President Ramaphosa, President Moon, in just a minute. And the President of South Africa. And the President of South Africa, as I said earlier. Oh, you did? I did not. I certainly did.
But you're going to mention twice.
So I'll go over that again. Let me tell you, we're delighted. I'm glad to say we're joined by Prime Minister Modi of India, who's on the line. Let's go.
Weirder.
Oh man, that was something else. So yeah, in case you couldn't make out the exact audio or what happened, Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, was introducing the president, he was introducing leaders from various countries that are not part of the G7, and he had just introduced South African President. I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize. Cyril Ramaphosa.
Racist.
Couldn't pronounce his name.
Yeah.
That is deeply racist.
So insensitive.
Unbelievable. So, Boris Johnson introduced Ramaphosa, and then Biden jumps in and said, hey, don't forget about South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, which if it weren't so abjectly terrifying that this is the President of the United States, is actually kind of funny.
Don't forget he's the President of the United States.
Yes. And, everyone kind of had a laugh. It was kind of a ha-ha, oh, that's Joe moment, which, I think normalizing this is actually a mistake because we're all having fun. It's so funny watching Joe struggle through these. But at the end of the day, he is the president of the United States. If it is ever determined that he's not fit to be president, then we get President Harris, which, scarily enough, might be worse.
Yeah.
Okay, so given that we see these gaffes, these mistakes from Biden that are becoming more and more frequent, what? Okay, so first question, it's a little facetious, but genuinely curious. Like, if you guys were betting men, do you guys think Joe Biden makes it through his full term? Mike,
I would say definitely, yeah, because I don't know how much work he's actually doing because he never shows up for appearances. Obviously, he's got a big team around him that seems to be doing a lot of the work for him. So even if by the end of his term, they're just puppeting him with a bunch of strings and like getting him to flop up on stage. Like they're gonna get him to the end of his term.
Weekend at Biden.
I don't. Yeah, that's been overplayed a bit, but yeah, it's so true. But he'll make it through this first one. I have serious doubts that he'll be able to do a second term, but yeah, I think he'll make it through the first one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we've seen this before in American politics where, there's a lot of conversation that's been had about Ronald Reagan and his second term with Alzheimer's and dementia, the idea that maybe he was not actually fit to kind of preside over the nation at that time. I think that they find a way, especially at that point, you're talking about actually the safety of the free world. You're talking about the moment that the rest of the world knows full well that this person is not capable of standing up for their country, is not capable of properly representing their country. That's a threat. So at that point, you're going to keep propping this man up, or if it gets so bad that you're going to replace the person. Those in-between states are a huge problem. I kind of do wonder if it's going to get that bad. I disagree with the folks who want to nitpick over certain little things that have gone on with regard to kind of these gaffes. However, there's no question that it poorly reflects. I mean, you look at this guy and we're talking about, you watch back on world history and you think about, could this man have sat beside Winston Churchill and Stalin? Could this man have faced down Mikhail Gorbachev? Like, no, there's no plausible scenario where he stood up with those giants of history. And it's a kind of a good thing that we have other goofs like Boris Johnson on the world stage right now who are just kind of also just jovial kind of weirdos that are getting along with the guy because he could not stand up against the real powerhouses of previous generations.
Well, I mean, I thought that was good, but probably not good enough to get a lay, I guess. But there's been like, I don't think it can be overstated. There's been an unprecedented lack of White House press conferences for this president so far, and like, there's so many other things like that where he just doesn't make appearances. He doesn't go out and do things. Like he's just gonna. He's just going to stumble his way through this term, and he's going to be just fine.
It's so funny the way you're describing Joe, which by the way deserves another way.
Thank you.
Oh my God. Is anyone seeing this?
I worked hard.
So the way you're describing Joe, it's kind of, it's one of the situations where it's so sad, so funny at the same time.
Yeah.
But the way you're describing him sounds like trying to stretch out your Monday leftovers to Friday. Just keep it in Tupperware, keep it in the fridge, open it up Thursday, do a smell check. Like, just try and getting your Monday night leftovers to make it to Friday. That's what it sounds like Joe Biden's presidency is right now, which is disheartening.
The college kid's refrigerator.
Which is disheartening to say the least. So in that case, Andrew, so we've talked about this a little bit before with your topic. But what do you think it means for, like, what do you think is going through the minds of other world leaders if they see a United States that has, just a weaker, lesser president who's not, I think the whole his faculties are going thing is a little overstated.
Yes.
But you can't argue that this guy does not. And again, I think some of Trump's like tough guy bravado's overstated too. But there was something that Trump brought to the table that Biden clearly is not going to bring. If he's not going to bring that kind of toughness, he's got to be sharp as a tack. Which he's 80. Is he 80 or he's 80, right? Yeah, he's 80 years old. Like, I'm not going to blame an 80-year-old guy for not being sharp. Like that's just, it is what it is. But man, in this case, what do you think? When you see, if you were a world leader and you saw this titan of a world power in America with Joe Biden as its figurehead, like what's going through your head? Like, what do you think what happens?
I think we've already seen it. We've seen it this week at the G7. We've heard repeatedly. Not only are now people like Joe Biden coming out and saying America's back, America's going back to normal. We've seen foreign powers say it, and not enemies, because I think the era of kind of hard power, the idea of pushing each other militarily, it's just not. It's not the way that it was during the Cold War.
Yeah.
But the idea of soft power and of political manipulation is more real than ever. And the fact that we're hearing folks in NATO say, oh, well, America's back. It's back to normal. We're back to, the old days where America, I put it on Twitter the other day. What are we back to? What are we celebrating? We're back to taking our European dates out while they nag us through the meal, and then we pick up the tab. Like, that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, oh, look, we're back to getting free meals. Like, that's all it is.
That's I hate that so much. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. You're 100% right.
It's so right.
And I guess I can give you a link for that one.
So right.
Oh,
I might just deserve a leg.
There you go.
Come
there you go.
on.
Yes, he's right. Right
Ridiculous.
is right. Yeah. All right. So, Michael, you're leading the country of Austin land. You're at
country of Austin.
You've been
land.
invited to G7, and Joe Biden can't remember your name. What is going through your head?
I'm being nice. I'm saying all the right things. I'm saying, this guy, he's the best leader that America's had in so long. And secretly to myself, I'm going like, oh, thank goodness we can take advantage of this guy. Hopefully they keep electing guys like this. But, even more than his demeanor or his lack of self-awareness at this point is just, his typical left-wing diplomacy where he's gonna give us all the money, he's gonna help us out, and he's gonna pick up the tab. Yeah. So when it comes to the world leaders that are our allies, I think that's a bigger deal than any,
Yes. So you think a lot of what I'm hearing is that a lot of the sort of niceties that we're getting from other world leaders is coming from as much a place of, like you said, I love that analogy. America's back to picking up the tab. Yeah. We're no longer going Dutch. America's picking it up the whole tab.
Yeah.
So I do think, it is crazy to think about like that. That's where we are. And last year that just wasn't the case. Yeah. It's crazy to think about. Before we pivot to Michael's topic, I do want to give a quick explainer of some of the goofiness going on today. Our editor-in-chief, George Upper, it is his birthday. George literally does not wear, or maybe cannot wear, anything other than Tommy Bahama apparel.
It's in the contract.
Yes. Oh, hey, there we go. That shirt he's wearing, that hat in that graphic is a Tommy Bahama hat.
Can we just get that up one more time?
Those glasses that he's wearing are Tommy Bahama glasses. Obviously, none of us make as much money as George, so we can't afford to wear Tommy Bahama. But the next best thing are Aloha shirts found at Goodwill. So, with that quick explanation out of the way, Michael, what did you bring to the table today?
Yeah, so in the last couple of weeks, there's been new reports coming out about January 6th Capitol incursion, and looking back, I remember when we all watched that happen live, and like everyone in the office was just absolutely horrified. It was one of the worst days. Even after the election, Trump lost the election. It was so much worse than that. It was a horrible day, and none of us, at least very few of us, bought into the theories that it was a false flag attack, which was, shortly then proven to be false. And, we all thought, okay, this is a bunch of, Trump supporters that are acting, horribly, and they should be held accountable for this. Yeah. But I don't think any of us were under the belief that this was some sort of armed insurrection where they were trying to take over the Capitol and, take out all the government officials there.
A new government.
This wasn't a group of organized terrorists that was trying to take over the country. But that's what Democrats have been saying ever since then. And, they keep coming out with these commissions and these investigations. They want to find out what happened when really it was just a horrible, horrible protest. And it was bad.
It was a perfect storm.
Yeah,
it was a perfect storm. Yeah.
A very emotional perfect storm.
Yep.
And comparing it to any one of the riots that happened over 2020 is a little unfair because it is the Capitol. It's a little different. Yes. But now, as these narratives continue to get propelled forward that this was a terrorist attack, that this was a coup, we're seeing evidence that no, this was definitely just a bunch of protesters that got way too rowdy and mob mentality took over.
Yep.
And Senator Ron Johnson on Thursday revealed that he and his team had been looking through some security footage that showed the West Terrace doorway, the Upper West Terrace doorway at the Capitol. And what they saw at the time the incursion was happening is that 5 U.S. Capitol police officers stood by and let in 300 of the rioters. Not even just let them in. One of the police officers kind of gestured towards the doorway as if he was like waving them in, inviting these guys in. And they just kind of, peacefully walked in. Now, they obviously, a lot of them weren't too peaceful when they got inside, but drink for dramatic effect. But yeah, so this is not how an insurrection happens. They don't get invited inside by police officers. Once the insurrectionists are inside, they usually don't stay within the rope lines that are supposed to guide people through.
Riots by Disney.
And so, Senator Johnson, his people, they poured over this video, and then they determined about 38% of the people at the incursion were just let in that doorway by police officers. So, there were plenty of people that were scaling walls and breaking through barriers, but there was a huge percentage of them that just kind of walked in, and they were just part of the crowd. And so, clearly, this is not an insurrection. This is as close you can get, as strong of evidence you can get, as this is not an insurrection. It was just a crazy riot that got a little out of hand. Does this new evidence, does it change your guys' opinion about January 6th at all?
It does and it doesn't.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier. There was a video a couple weeks ago that showed something kind of similar, in which once they were actually in the building, certain rooms were open to them, and certain police officers can be heard saying, show the world who you really are. Don't go in there and destroy things. Just walk through, make your presence known, and leave. And that's unacceptable when you're trying to uphold the law. That's not okay. So yes, it does show me, which I already believed this. The idea that this was some major, wide-scale terrorist attack that a 9/11 level commission could prove something about or discover something about is nonsense. And I was thinking about it right now. This came to me. It is a continuation of this ridiculous false narrative, an impossible narrative, and an unbelievable narrative that we have heard for the last 4 years, is that Donald Trump is both an evil mastermind and a complete dunce.
Yeah.
And Trump supporters are complete dunces and political mastermind.
Yeah.
You can't have both. It's not possible. This isn't a cartoon. It's not a James Bond film. So this idea that we have a bunch of, idiot rubes from middle America who are also perfectly planning this perfect storm terrorist attack it's foolish. And this is all the evidence you need to show anyone to be like, okay, well, what's this? Why did the police just let them walk right in the door?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, I agree with most of your points. I think this is one of those situations where if it had happened and the shoes were flipped, I wonder, this has to be one of those storylines where the left would just glom onto this, right? Look at this proof, right wing. And of course, they're not going to mention this at all. But just thinking of it in context of that, it's tough to say. Me personally, I don't think it really changed my opinion. I'm much of the same thought as Andrew. I thought the people who breached the Capitol should be condemned. Disgusting behavior.
Yeah.
I think the mainstream leftist media using this flashpoint event as, anyone who's supported or ever supported Trump should be locked up. They're clearly dangerous. No, okay, hold your horses. That's always been patently absurd on its face.
Right.
As much as a left will peddle it, that's all. I would hope most sane people can see that as just being absurd. Yeah. I would say ultimately, no, this new revelation doesn't change much for me. It does make me wonder, though, I hate putting my tinfoil hat on, but what? I wish I had truth serum. I could just shoot up everyone there. I just want to know what happened, Well, because that's one of the reasons. The main reason I oppose a January 6th commission is because we already know what the result will be.
Yeah.
If it's a commission run primarily by Democrats, it's Trump's fault.
Yeah.
If it's run by primarily Republicans, not Trump's fault. If it's split 50-50, nothing will get decided.
They're just going to grandstand and make speeches.
Yeah.
It's the same thing they've done with the Supreme Court hearings for the last 4 years.
Exactly. So it's just one of those things, man. It doesn't change a lot for me, but man, it makes you think.
And the other question I have, and I'm kind of split on this, I've gone back and forth, is whether you guys think that this shakes up kind of the mainstream narrative about the Capitol incursion, because this whole terrorist coup narrative, it keeps taking hit after hit. They said that 5 people were killed, and then slowly we've learned that it was more like 3 or 2 people that were killed, and there's one of the guys that died didn't even die at the at the incursion. They just claimed that he did because nobody knows how to do good reporting nowadays.
Nope.
We found out that people were let in. We found out all these other things. So do you think that this narrative is starting to get chipped away at, or do you think 40% of the country is going to believe it, 40%'s not, and the other 20% aren't really going to care.
I don't think the narrative will get chipped away at because the way the left-wing media operates, it's never been about news. It's about the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not about the specifics of January 6th. Notice how very rarely are they talking about, who went where, what happened when. It's always just January 6th, this blanket event.
Yeah.
And it's, blame the conservatives. That's what it is. So no, I don't think this chips away at their narrative because, it does beg the question of what that cop was doing in the video. But, at this point, like these granular events that add meaningful context to these narratives, the left, they don't care about that. There's no point in going back and visiting these minute details that are important, but not for the sake of their narrative. They're important for news, but that's not what places like CNN, MSNBC cover.
Yeah, with today's news cycles, it's just kind of the narrative gets established, and then even if more context flies in the face of that, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's old news.
It is all about how the media can make you feel. That is all that it is. That it's all that it's been for several, probably a decade now, is how can we make you feel? And so is this going to change anyone's minds? Probably not, because they've seen an image of a bunch of Trump supporters acting up and storming the Capitol. That is an emotional image.
Yep.
They are going to feel emotions about it.
Yep.
And that emotion is going to be bigger than any fact that comes and refutes it. And if they were to actually get out there with a loudspeaker or a megaphone and say, no, we were wrong. We don't want to make you feel those emotions anymore. What emotions are people going to feel? They're going to feel like I was wrong and I bought into the wrong narrative, and you'd hate for an audience to feel stupid or for an audience to feel wrong.
Yeah.
Like a news organization never wants to see their audience feel wrong because that's negative. And you never want to see the audience feel like they were lied to or they got the wrong information, because then they can't trust the source anymore.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's keeping them and that's actually driving that news cycle is the news organization getting that audience. So these left-wing organizations are not going to betray their audiences and make them feel wrong and make themselves look stupid when they could just continue making people feel something that is incorrect.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the upside of operating primarily with narratives, is like you can always twist the narrative to make your story work.
Of course you can.
You can't twist the facts. So you just brush the facts to the side and just ignore them, like that's
not key.
That's strategy 101.
Yep.
And with that thought of January 6th, hopefully it's the last time we ever have to bring that up on this show again. I highly doubt that'll happen.
Never come back up.
But if you are interested to see if we ever bring up January 6th again, you can catch us every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. And actually, sorry, I'm out of practice. And as a friendly reminder, this is WJ Live powered by the Western Journal. If you don't want to miss an episode of WJ Live, please go to westernjournal.com/newsletters. There you can actually sign up for a multitude of different newsletters. There is one specifically for our show. Please, at the very least, sign up for that. That way you get our show's link emailed directly to you. No fiddling with any YouTube algorithms trying to tell you what you should and shouldn't be watching. Next, this is super important, so I hope I don't butcher this. We have a Flag Day sale. If you are interested, westernjournal.com/join for less than $5 a month. You can support all of the wonderful things we try to do here, including wearing a bunch of lays and repping Tommy Bahama. By the way, if anyone from Tommy Bahama is watching this by chance, we would love to be WJ Live powered by Tommy Bahama. So, by the way, if that happens, George will never ever fire me. So please, let's get that happening. Last couple things you guys can do for us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure to go to your audio podcast subscription service of choice. Whoops, that's the wrong graphic. It's all good. Go to your audio. Oh, wow, that totally threw me off. Go to your.
We've only done this 100 sometimes.
Dude, I have dad brain. Leave me alone. Go to your podcast network of choice. You can follow us there. Please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. That would be wonderful. If you want to give us 4, because I'm butchering this, I totally get that.
Yeah.
If you are,
Ryan, 5 for us.
yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. If you're already listening to us on audio, make sure to go to youtube.com/WJ Live. Make sure to check us out. hit that subscribe button. Sorry that I jumped the gun on that. And make sure you also hit the bell. That way you're notified when new episodes go live. Thank you so much for joining us today. And just as one last reminder, it is George Upper's birthday. I hear it is also Donald Trump's birthday, but, you know, come on. It's George Upper's birthday.
Yeah, look at him.
There we go. Come on, guys. All right. And with that, guys, we will see you Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful, wonderful Monday.
Hey, guys. Huge story. We need a fresh card. Let's red label it. Roll as fast as we can.
All right, on it. Sounds good. All right, guys, we got a red label breaking story. Can we get a picture for that? And can we try to get that out in the next 20 minutes? I want eyes on it as soon as possible.
On it, Joe. 2 more minutes and we'll be live.
Sam, we're going to need a slot for that story, so figure out what you want to bump. Ashley, we're going to want to translate it into Spanish yesterday.
Sí, señor. We can slide it in at 2:30. It should be going out here in about 10 minutes.